All right, Kelly, thank you very much. And I especially want to thank everybody that made the decision to attend this webinar today. We realize your time is valuable. In my years of working in JDE, it's measured now and as like 25 plus years, I have found that webinars that focus on the demonstration, the look and feel, they're most effective in terms of getting the point across, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. I want to keep my slide deck to a minimum of 10 minutes. Callie will send it out right after so you can review it in detail. And I do have my associates, Suman, Ben, and Joe. We want to quickly get to the demonstration part. So here I go with the slide. Now, first off, a little bit about K-Rise, some background. We're out of the Chicago suburb of Aurora, and we have been providing business process automation, workflow, portal solutions for the JDE community going back to 2003. We introduced our EASYProcess low-code platform before all the hype with all of the Gartner and the industry analysts, and obviously JDE now, especially with the latest 2.0 version. As you can tell, we're highlighting some of our big customers on the last bullet point, but JDE is many small to middle-sized business companies. So we have many companies there. In fact, this slide here simply highlights high level. These are all JDE customers of ours with successful projects. And high level, who is K-Rise? K-Rise, we're an ISV. We don't do JDE services projects, like upgrades and things like that. We focus on the value add custom projects. You can see that on the bottom. Projects dealing with sales, like e-commerce, spend. That's what we're going to be talking about today with vendor onboarding, and obviously portals tied to the same thing, inventory, HR projects. So we can pretty much do anything. The big differentiation with our EASYProcess low-code platform, and you see that in the depicted there with drag and drop, kind of like a Visio user interface. The big difference between us and the other companies, Appian, OutSystems, Mendex, that Gartner and Forrester note, is that everything JDE is pre-integrated. You're going to see that when Ben does the demo today. That's our exclusive. And in terms of the compliance and the validation, OVI certified, both 32-64-bit. We have a payments solution, so obviously we've got to be compliant with PCI DSS. And then we're CPA, bottom right, CPA certified, SOC 2 Type 2 for security. And this slide simply notes Oracle comments and slides that justify and really reinforce why we work with so many JDE companies. And the bottom right there, before modifying JDE, consider other options. And JDE slides talk about the no-code alternative UI. That's what we're talking about today with vendor onboarding. It's just one of our apps. High level, this is our architecture. That's EASYProcess there in the middle. We do headless, REST. A lot of people buy us for batch processes, automation, web, mobile, or mobile from both angles, thin client browser and fat client Google Apple Store download. And you can see on the bottom there, that's what I just mentioned, our exclusive. Is everything JDE, doing a lot of orchestration integration projects. Obviously, the business function approach using good old interoperability, the JDE XML call object, those not on 9.2, we can easily cover anything integration from that angle. Just another quick overview. Now, we do many projects across the business landscape, focusing on procurement, spend, procure to pay. You can see that the vendor onboarding is what we're going to be focusing on today, the very first one up there. But we have a full 360-degree suite of procurement solutions. And now, if we drill it down to master records. So when I think of a master record, I think of as of a vendor and a customer. Item master, or excuse me, address book master crate, and that's what we're going to be doing today. We do item master crate too. As a matter of fact, what's interesting about item master crate is just about all of our projects encompass vendor onboarding with item master onboarding. Obviously, you're either dealing with an existing supplier or a new supplier. So don't think of these various portals and area functionality as separate silos. Quite the contrary. We create the deliverable per your exact requirements. And we'll talk about things like workflow. And you see that in the second, the integration, I mentioned that, Orchestrator, business function. But workflow is really, really important. And when I think of why people implement JD Edwards, realize there's still gaps after a successful ERP. This is what I hear a lot of times: complex manual, Excel's, emails, Dropbox, and workflow is so important. We're showing workflow diagram in the right, tied to further reasons why people want business process automation, quicker processing, reduced errors. JDE is a source of truth, but once again, the workflow elements, and Ben's going to review the workflow we're going to show with the demos today, the two set demos. One's a demo environment, non-production, and the other one is a client production demo environment. But we've got the workflow. What are the reasons why people do projects like this? This is coming from our customer, First Quantum. It's a copper mine in Panama, and you can see what Rudolph noted there with this in focus presentation. Master data accuracy, internal controls, once again, workflow. And yeah, he took it a step further in terms of why the vendor onboarding project. And once again, I want to get through this. You're going to have the slide deck, but you can see those reasons there. Fox is another one. Fox, and I just wanted to show this was Ryan Tuttle from Fox presenting at a Collaborate session. And once again, this is Ryan's perspective of why vendor onboarding is important for them. And once again, I'm not going to go through it. I want to get right to the demo. And by the way, there's their GUI, and you can see, the various options there. And this is what Ben is going to touch on. You need an intelligent form. So, for example, this is actually a Fox Networks form when they presented it at the session. And things like vendor type relate to a completely different set of users, roles, permissions, different workflows. It might go through like some type of government, process based on vendor type. Things like when the form and they're entering the banking information. The form detects if it's North America, it'll default to ACH, bank-to-bank transfer. If it's out of North America, it defaults to wire transfer. And with that, I am right at the 10-minute mark, so I kept it there. Go ahead, Ben, and share your screen. And I'll turn it over to Ben. And if you have questions, just click it in the chat, and Callie is monitoring the chat questions, so we'll make it interactive from that angle. Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks, Doug. So yeah, I'm going to show a demo kind of walkthrough of our base vendor onboarding portal. But before I go into the actual application itself, I'm going to show a little bit of the IDE and just how we built this project, and including the workflow designer, which this application is going to follow. So over here, this is our web page designer, our MVC canvas. It's all model view controller based. It's all drag and drop. You can see kind of this list of controls over here. And so I built out the main vendor form using this designer. So you can see things like address information, company information down here. And so that's a little preview of kind of how this form was built. And over here is the workflow designer. And this is the workflow for this application that it's going to be using. So it's a pretty simple standard workflow for vendor onboarding. We have this composing status where a business user will log into the application, fill out some vendor information, and then that'll be submitted to a workflow. From there, the vendor is notified through an email saying, here's your registration link, go in and log in and fill out some more vendor information. And so that's what happens here. Then they submit it to the review status, which is monitored by the procurement users. And they can either approve the request more clarification from the vendor, or they can cancel the request altogether. So if they approve, goes to another layer of approval through finance, which has the same options. And from there, the vendor gets created in JDE. And the reason this is dark blue is because the status runs on a batch, which means all of the requests here will get processed at the same time every minute, essentially, and will get put into JDE from there. And the vendor change flow is identical to this. The only difference is the vendor would create the request, and so it would skip this vendor status here and just go straight to the review, which I'll show later on. But I'm going to log into the portal as Marion Johnston, who's a business user. Here we have kind of a home screen dashboard. We have a couple options here, so we can request a new vendor using this option. So I'll click here. And here we can fill out some information. So I'll call this a webinar vendor. Type in some contact name, so John vendor. Type in my email here, phone number, some contact info, some address information. And then we have the state dropdown, which is coming from a UDC and JDE, and same thing with the country dropdown as well. So go ahead and submit this. And the vendor request is submitted. So if I go over to my email, this is the email that the vendor would receive. So registration process has begun. You can click here to register your new account. So I'm going to log out of Marion Johnston, close out of this window, and I'm going to click here to get into the portal. And here it gives us a user ID, built from the name that we typed in. And then we can just fill out a password. And we'll set that password here. And that takes us to the main vendor form. So this has many more fields than the previous one. It has some pre-filled lines here. So we can just kind of fill in the blanks. Postal code, we can type in some website here, correct the phone number if that's incorrect. We can type in some tax ID. We have some yes or no questions here. If it's some sort of government related entity, we can check this box. And then we have some banking information. So we can fill out a bank. Bank account type is also coming from a UDC and JDE. So we'll have that as checking account. And we have account number and routing number here. But this form is dynamic in that if we select anything other than the United States, then these will change to IBAN and SWIFT. And so if I switch it back, then we'll see the account number and routing number again. So I'll fill out some of these. And then the bottom section is attachments. So we have a list of attachment types here. So I can start uploading. Let's see, so W9, you can upload that. Clicking on the upload, it adds it to this list where we can download it from here, and we can also delete it if we don't need it. We also need a bank confirmation. So we can actually upload multiple documents for the same type. And then we also need I'll leave the certificate of insurance because I'm going to show a request more information functionality from the procurement. So I'll just upload it with these documents and click submit. So a request has been submitted. That takes us back to a dashboard page for the vendor. which has less actions than a business user. So they can view or edit their information, which I'll show later, and they can also edit some user information as well, which just takes them to the standard page where they can edit first name, last name, and email. But I will go ahead and log out of this, and we should have gotten an email as the procurement. So we can see the status hit the review status. It's pending approval, so I'll click here to log in. And now log in as Vanessa Hudson, who's our procurement. Takes us straight to the form. And here, everything is read-only. So we can see all the fields, we can see what they filled out, but procurement also has extra section here that they have to fill out, which is the payment terms for the vendor. But let's say the procurement user notices, hey, they missed a document here. So we'll say missing document as the comment, and then let's request clarification. And when a business user, does some approval or anything on the form, they're taken to this requests page. And here they can see, this is the webinar vendor that I'm creating here. They can see some information about it, and they can see timestamps of when this was submitted, who submitted it. We can see, the comment that I just made on the review status, and we can see what the status it's at. So it's vendor. So I'll log out of procurement, and we got this email as a vendor. So essentially, they said it was a missing document. This was posted by Vanessa Hudson, and we can click here to go into the portal to fix that. So I'll log in as our vendor user. And we can see the comment on the screen as well here, missing document. So go down, we'll see, okay, I'm missing a certificate of insurance. And so I'll attach this here. And go ahead and submit. This will once again go to procurement. They would have gotten that email again, but I could also just log in through the portal here. So we'll see there's a couple of requests awaiting for approval, so I can click here to view them. One thing I didn't mention last time was, we have this assigned to me filter here as well, which will only filter on what we're waiting on, or what's waiting on us. So I'll click on the review status over here, takes us into here, and I can, assign the payment terms. Everything's all good, so I'll click approve. All right, and then should have gotten another email, which would have gone out to finance. So I'll click here to go into the form, log in as our finance user. And then the finance users have access to edit the banking information. So the form is dynamic in that way. We can make some corrections here if something's missing in the name. Some bank name or account number changes we need to make. We can just do that here. But once it's all good, we can click approve. All right, and then it's at this create vendor status, which I showed earlier. Once it goes through all approval, goes to this dark blue status. So this is going to run on a batch. The batch is running minutely, so it should be in a little bit here. It should get processed, and then once it's processed, we should see it move from pending to completed. And it looks like that's what happened. So if we go over to completed, yep. So it was created and it terminated, and we have an address number. So I'll go into JDE with that address number. We can see our webinar vendor here. First, we can check out the attachments. So these are the attachments that I uploaded to the portal. They're all here in the media object attachments. And then I can go to the address book revision. We can see some details here. We can see our tax ID, mailing address information. That's all here. In accounts processing or accounts payable, we have the payment terms that we selected. And lastly, in the bank account, we have that bank account that was entered and the changes that were made by finance as well. All right, so that shows a vendor creation. Now let's log in as our vendor and request a change. And so, as I said before, the change will follow the same workflow as a vendor create. So we can click on here, view or edit vendor information. This takes us here to kind of like a read-only screen of what's in JDE right now and our existing attachments. If we click edit down here, then it pulls up that form again. So we can make some changes here. Let's say make changes to the address. So let's say this is address 3. Make some changes to the postal code. And we can also upload additional attachments if we need. So we can upload, and these will also get entered into JDE at the end of this flow as well. All right, and so that will follow the same flow. So I'll log in as procurement to send this through. Let's click view all. And we see our webinar vendor, and they're requesting a change. So we can see what that's about by clicking on this review. And we can see it all in read only. We have the old values in red down here and the values that are existing on top. So we can see what was changed. We can see the new file attachments, and we can approve. So lastly, we're still receiving emails at every step here. So finance would be next. Let me log out procurement and then click here. This finance user would be next. And so same thing, they can edit the banking information and they can go ahead and approve. And once again, it's at that create vendor status, which in this case is just going to update the vendor to those new values that we typed in. And so once again, go ahead and search here. So once again, once this request enters that completed status, that's when we know that that change is in JDE. So yep, here it is. It just created or updated the vendor. So if we go back into JDE, we'll be able to see a couple things. We'll be able to see that new attachment here, the vendor requests Excel sheet that I uploaded. And then under the address book revisions, we should be able to see under mailing, that address changed to address 3 and that postal code change as well. All right, and yeah, that's about it. That's the vendor onboarding application.
Great job, Ben. And I want everybody to understand that we call this our pre-built app. It's based on best practices. We recognize that everybody that uses this pre-built app, first, your users, the roles and the permissions, your workflows are unique to your company. Same thing with the form. We're showing a form, and that form could be personalized very much to exactly what your vision is, between the supplier and yourself. Even with document management, Ben showed our integration to app the media object, but we work with external document. We can work with custom tables in JD Edwards. Outside of JD Edwards, we can work with document management software like CreateForm, Optio. But what we have with this base template is what we consider great starting point, and we deliver it with all the integration to your JD Edwards database, your JD Edwards servers. We'll touch on that at the end of the webinar.
Doug, if I can interrupt for a minute.
Sure.
There was a question about what platform this was built on, and since Ben, you already have the screen on. Can you show some IDE pages like, the JDE integration processes, the methods, and just the IDE homepage, workbench, so that we can showcase the platform?
Sure. Yeah. So this is the homepage. This is kind of the IDE homepage. So this is the main menu. So there's a lot of options here, but you can see we have security. So this manages users of the application. We can do things like SAML logins, SSO, and also manage like the authorizations for each user here. Under this development menu, there's everything that you need for development. Like here you would develop web pages, widgets, templates, methods, workflows. This is where I made the workflow in that web page that you saw. We have other things like setup here. And then if I click on this icon, it brings us into the developer workbench. This is where you primarily would do all of your development as a developer. So here's all the objects that went into the application, and kind of configurations here, batch jobs, workflows. There's tasks associated with each project, so you can define some tasks for developers to carry through, and this will move from DV to QA to PD, once it's all finished.
Can you show a method with JDE call?
Yeah. So yeah, there's this create vendor in JDE. So this is the long method that actually creates and updates the vendor JDE. So yeah, just like the WebPart designer, it's all drag and drop. So there's a list of services on the left here. There's, I think, over 200 of them that do kind of specific things, but this database services here where you can update, delete, inquire on a database, and much more options over there. There's also business function services, which I'm using here, kind of like update address book. So if you go into here, you can see it's a business function call. This is all kind of dynamically put into there. Everything that was filled out from the form and some existing information as well. So yeah. Anything?
And I just want to tell the attendees that I am going to review PrintPack, a client of ours that integrated with Orchestrator to a large degree because their JDE is so customized. They delivered a slide deck presentation. I'll touch on that. But like I said, for non 9.2, good old XML call object interoperability using business functions calls or Orchestrator or a combination, or you tell us BSSV, so web services. We've got all of the integration methods built into the platform.
Yep. And yeah, I should say too, like transferring attachments to JDE is through an AIS API, so it's integrated that way.
One other thing with the media object tied to documents, many times in these projects, people will want to have an audit or transaction history, and we can take that approach a couple of ways outside of the media object, where we're like in the media object, we can put in all of the actions that occurred and even manual comments if you wanted to enter it there, or we can do it outside of JDE, the history audit, right, Ben?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Okay, great. Suman, are there any other questions that you wanted to touch on before we hand it off?
No, we have questions, but we'll take care of that at the end.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. Go ahead and unshare, and then Joe.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. So this is a vendor onboarding app for a company called First Quantum. They're a mining company headquartered in Canada, though this application was specifically made for their Panama mining operation. So it's going to look quite similar to what Ben just showed off. We'll start by logging in as a requester user. So this is a user from within the company, maybe someone who works at the mine site or someone who supports the mining operations, and they've identified a need for a new vendor. So they're going to create a new vendor request. So first off, we have this all requests page. It shows all requests submitted. You can filter for just your own requests. First Quantum considers all requesters to essentially be part of a similar group of individuals, so they might all want to work on the same requests. So they have access to see everyone else's. We'll go and create a new vendor request. So pretty similar to the basic vendor information screen from the last. So we'll put in new vendor. Just put my name in here. Select a country. Have to supply a reason. We also have to specify an on behalf of. So this just pulls from the employee address book. And it's just a way to tie a request back to someone in the business who may or may not have been the person to actually create the request in the portal, but just the primary originator of the request. We can also upload attachments at this point, typically in the form of maybe an email that outlines the justification, but it could be anything. All right, so going to hit submit. And the first time we click submit, we see these possible vendor matches found. So basically, we're checking in JDE to see if we can find any existing vendors that might match this information we typed in. So we're checking for similar names. We're checking the who's who tables for similarly named contacts. So I just put in the name Joe. I'm sure there's a ton of Joes here. So we get these potential matches, and this is to prevent us from maybe raising a new vendor request for a vendor that actually already exists. Maybe we just, it was going by a new name now. So we weren't sure if this was really a new vendor or maybe a chain vendor request. So as long as we check through these and make sure that it doesn't already have what we're looking for, we can just submit again. New vendor request has been submitted. Okay, so the next approver is going to be procurement. So right now, the request we just created is in the vendor validation status. And this is just one more check to make sure that this vendor doesn't already exist and does indeed need to be processed through the rest of the flow. So as a procurement user, I'll open the vendor. I can see the basic information that was supplied, and I could send it back to the requester for clarification. I can approve it or cancel it from here. So I'll just approve it. And what happens at this point in time, we actually create a vendor record in JDE with just this very basic information. And this is created as a VP type record, vendor pending. It's done that way so that if some important process that needs its own chain of approvals depends on having this new vendor number, we can at least get that vendor number before the vendor is completely onboarded. And that way it helps to reduce delays and wait times to get these records onboarded. Right. So now we should be getting an email in order to sign in as the vendor and fill out some extended information. All right. Doesn't look like we're getting that email, but I can check on an existing request. So this is quite similar to the form that the vendor would receive. This is actually a change vendor request. So this is an existing vendor that's going through a flow to get some of this information updated. So we see that we have all of these extended information fields. Some of them, they were typed in by us at that first step. The rest of these would come from the vendor and subsequent approvers down the line. So we've got all of this address book master information and quite a number of who's who fields. So we have legal representative, primary contact for accounts payable, procurement contact. All of this is strictly defined who's who information. So we have a particular type of who's who record for each one of these. We also have bank information, which similarly has validation for ABA SWIFT and transit code based on the country that's selected. So in this change vendor form, though, we actually are able to see what information we might have changed. So if I just can hit approve, and we will see that the change that I specified here, just like this website, company website below, shows up in red. All right. Sign in as security. All right, so here's our request. Okay, so we see address here is in green and the old value is in red. So just at a glance, you can scan down the page and see that, oh, everything seems the same except we're changing the address, the city, and the company website. All right, so I'll approve this. Okay. Sign in as Treasury. See that request still. Request approved. And now for the last step at Treasury Supervisor. These are when the updates are actually going to be made. Right, we see the changes to be made. Click approve. Request approved. All right, now just to see the changes that were then made, we're going to try and create another vendor change on that same vendor. Check if I got any emails. Yes, this is using a customer SMTP server, so that may be down for maintenance right now. So I'm going to go to create a new vendor change request. And because this is an existing vendor, we search for an existing vendor number. This is the one that I had just updated. All right, so now we go back to this same form and we can see that the changes that I made are there and it's been updated in JDE. So that's the basic change vendor flow. We also have a number of other more basic change vendor flows. So we have a blacklist vendor, de-blacklist vendor, and deactivate vendor. Instead of having the user type in the manual data changes, we have a prescribed set of changes for fields on, I believe, the supplier master table, such as a hold code, payment terms, minimum values. So these act as essentially a flag to their JDE system that this vendor has been deactivated. So we make the request here for a given vendor. And then it simply needs to be approved. And the changes are made automatically in JDE. No need to have anyone actually change the individual columns. So we'll see as a procurement. All right. So this is our deactivate vendor request. We see that this column here filters on the request type. And because there's no reason to review that large form with all of those data fields, we're not actually entering any new data. We just get to see the very basic vendor information that we saw before. So we approve it like this. Very nice and quick because we're not dealing with all of those other form fields. And again, just this same small form. I believe this actually goes through a slightly different approval flow. Right, so this goes to AP. And then finally to AP supervisor. Right. We've got this. Right. Now let's sign in as the requester. We should be able to see a change to the name on that vendor record. Let's see. Well, I wanted to show you the change to the vendor record, but because it's now blacklisted, it does not show up as an option to create further changes to. So we do have a change in the works to make a whole separate reactivate vendor flow.
Which actually is good to show that you showed that, Joe, because, you know, we first showed a demo environment and non-production. Now we're showing something more real, obviously. And Suman, I believe one of the questions involved with what exactly is our workflow, is it tied to JDE?
Yes.
And this is a good example here where, you know, that workflow with blacklist is supposed to do that. And by the way, Joe, are you done right now? Should Suman answer that workflow question that came in?
Yeah, that's about all I have to show.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Joe.
Okay, Doug, I have like 7, 8 questions. I can go through them at the end if you want to cover the, you know.
Sure. So what I'm going to do is, so let me now share. Joe, can you unshare your screen?
Yep, 1 second.
Okay, let me share my screen. And a couple of things I want to, you know, talk about the pricing and, you know, what our gallery is. But before I do that, I do want to bring up, because Joe showed, Ben showed business function integration. And this is Blueprint. This is just a few months ago, and it's print pack. And Crystal took the lead with this presentation, and you can see they are 9.2. And we did an e-commerce project with them, and they used, this is the company that's very, very customized. But you can see that deals with the portal. But when they get into the vendor onboarding project that they did with us, and once again, this is, you know, their requirements, and you can see what that is about, and the reasons why they chose Orchestrator, create address book record, and you know, work with their address book. So once again, how you want to integrate with JDE, Orchestrator business function combination, reasons for using orchestration, use of customer vendor setup processes, and obviously the benefits of the orchestration. But I do want to and by the way, I can send this slide deck, this print pack slide deck is along with the follow-up, but I wanted to make sure I covered that. The last thing I want to touch on is this right here. This is a scoping document. So when we do a project, our developers have a number of questions, requirements, tasks to create. So what is the definition when we say we've got a pre-built app? We've got a pre-built vendor onboarding app. And this is, you know, a 16-page document, and you can see what we're doing is a best practices approach. We've done a lot of vendor onboarding. I touched on Fox and First Quantum and Print Pack, but we've done a number of them over the years. So we define, as an example, okay, this is a very typical workflow request, and it's in this shared document. So we give you this scoping document. And by the way, there's a functionality overview document on top of it, and we get into the process flow. You can see that the vendor, and by the way, did I pass up the vendor request? okay, I thought I was, but you could see that. Oh, there we go. And they, start out with the home dashboard. So we've got that already created with our low code platform. Some of the, screens where we are in the steps of the workflow and being able to quickly get a synopsis of, the document type and the person and the date time stamp. We have a basic form, and as we've showed you, that form can be edited. So this is our definition of a pre-built. In fact, these are obviously you have to have email. And by the way, it doesn't have to be email. We can work with SMS text. I know there was a question about our cloud, and we use AWS. So AWS has an SMS text service that we can use. So notifications can be email, SMS, text. We even have a native app that's a third notification process if you want to include that off of your app. Some of the JDE integration points that we work with this base app. Suman, am I missing something with this scoping document or
No, you are not. Just to sum it up, this is what our standard features mean with VOB. If you have to take this product as of now, this document will work as a feature set to explain you what exactly we include as part of our pre-built product. You can move on to the pricing, Doug. Then we can go to.
Okay, so there we are right there. And so what you can see is we have pricing levels with, say, VOB. And here, and by the way, start out from the top, 125. We have a lot of companies that work with us. This is an annual SaaS fee. What is SaaS? SaaS are the four cost components. It's software licensing, it's the support, it's the help desk and the updates that you get, it's the AWS infrastructure, load balancing, 3 environments, optimized to peak performance, minimizing latency and that, and even the services. So that's what we're talking about here. So if somebody wants, say, vendor onboarding, that's what we call one pre-built licensed product. And by the way, you can also do a custom app if you would like. And this is working from the K-Rise AWS deployment, and we support AWS across the world, Sydney, Paris. So we've got a lot of global customers, multiple data centers in the United States. And it talks about the setup with DevOps, the various environments that, of course, you need. License fee includes the go live to the pre-built app. And it doesn't have to be, a vendor onboarding. As you can see, we have our payment, we have our customer onboarding, item master onboarding, our supplier vendor portal that we call PO planner. So it includes the services with that. And we're installing that base template. Suman, did you want to add some additional thoughts to this?
Yes, I will take it all from here. I'll go through the questions and keep this pricing up here so I can use it as a reference.
Okay.
One question is here: is the banking information stored in JDE? Yes, and you saw that Ben was showing it does go to JDE. We use business functions. What platform is the actual vendor portal built on, and the forms are built on? And that's a very good question, because a normal response could be anything, could be Salesforce, could be .NET or Java. But whatever you saw today was built on our low-code platform, EASYProcess. If we deliver this product to you in the cloud, you have access to every forms, every code that Ben was showing, which is a drag and drop to modify it. Any of your developers, your partners, if they wish to change it, they don't need to learn any programming language. We have our own training, and like I said, it's a low code, doesn't require a lot of programming effort, learning effort, and can be learned quickly, and can be used to change it. Another question I have is: can you mask the banking information? Yes, we use masking all the time. Generally, social security numbers for our HR portals, but yes, if you want to mask that every time you show it, it will only show with the last 4. And then at the end, in the JDE Edwards, of course, you have everything. Another very good question. As a JDE client, are we responsible to create the workflow using IDE? The answer to that question will be no. What you saw today will be delivered as a part of our pre-built product. Everything that Doug was showing in the document, we will include, set that up and go live with that, and you'll go live with that feature as part of our standard license fee or any license fee. And the workflow, of course, comes with it. In future, if you want to add more workflow or custom workflow, like Joe was showing, a workflow to deactivate, you can do that with our standard, with our platform. But the product itself, as a standard, comes with the workflow. There are several category code fields in JDE address book that we use for reporting filtering purpose. Can we add those fields in the vendor form? The answer will be yes. What we saw was very standard, I would say basic minimum pre-built product. And once we set it up and you are live with that, as a phase 2, you can include any fields. Those are the things can be added as a part of the scope of the project as we go along. The product itself the platform supports full DevOps. So there is no copy and paste. Everything, any kind of change request will go through our DevOps. So in this example, after we set it up with a fully working live VOB, we'll get a change request for you to add all those CAD codes and take it through QA and production. I think, Doug, that answers all the questions.
Whoops, I was muted. Sorry about that, folks. The last, and by the way, we're almost making this exactly 1 hour. Thanks, team, for that. The last thing I want to emphasize is we have app webinars, and then we have platform webinars. So we're like JDE. Everything JDE apps is based on tools. Everything with us apps, like the vendor onboarding, is based on our EASYProcess platform. We give you the keys. People are starting to realize that Java and .NET deliverables, because of custom changes and code integrity issues related to custom programming language, it's bad. It's a hassle, and it doesn't deliver the quality that you want. And once again, we have e-learning, so every one of our customers, to some extent, learn EASYProcess, even if they want to make a change to a button or something. It's so that is so intuitive and easy to learn. We have
Doug, I got one more question, if I could answer before the time runs out.
Right
so ahead. One of the questions I just came is, what exactly, if you go with our pre-built and standard features, what's as a JDE client, what's your involvement? To answer your question, we are, all the logic you saw, all the workflow you saw is part of our product. In terms of JDE Edwards, we are using standard business function. Other than helping us connect your JDE Edwards, which generally take less than a day with our what we call Easy Cloud connector, we will not put any major strain on your company resource to set up our standard features.
Okay, that's a good point. And that ties to what I'm talking about with EASYProcess. Clients can have any level of development ownership, project management ownership with the DevOps portion. It's easy to work with. It's based on web. The IDE is Chrome. And we natively support AWS. We do support other cloud and public and private clouds, but we, because of the updates, we strongly recommend using our AWS, which is what we mean by the third bullet item there. So with that, thanks for making this interactive. Thanks for so many questions. Suman, is that it from your side?
Yes.
We started at 1:01 Chicago time. We're ending at 2:01 Chicago time, exactly 1 hour. Thank you, everybody. We'll send you the follow-up recording and slide deck and other related information. Feel free to contact us for any level of next step if you'd like to do that. Thank you and have a great day. Bye now.